All right, so we talked about non-renewable and something I said in the video, and I kind of said it really quickly, guys. Non-renewable doesn't necessarily mean it'll never come back to Earth. Some non-renewable resources can replenish by definition, they are intended to replenish over long periods of time, but not in our lifetime, and many of them will never, okay? What a non-renewable resource is, once you use it, it runs out. Renewable are inexhaustible. They're meant to continuously be placed back into the cycle, like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, which is our next chapter. But somehow over time, they created this category called potentially renewable. Okay, notice how I put the word flowing water, fresh air. Sometimes renewable resources are at risk of going from being renewable to not non-renewable, because we can't say, but maybe to a point of like non-cycling or slow down in its ability to replenish because of something we've done, either overused or degraded that resource. So let's look at fresh water. Fresh water is supposed to cycle. It's the water cycle, right? You learn that every year of elementary. You sang songs about it. Yet there's some areas all over the world where their water is not available, and it's supposed to be, okay? So something's going on, and it's taking renewable resources and putting them into their own category, which is potentially renewable, which means there is a threat to it following its natural cycle and being available forever. Fresh water, fresh air is considered. Land or soil, ability to farm on land. Those are what they categorize as potentially renewable resources. So what's the biggest problem with resources? Is the abuse of it. Yes, especially us. And does that look familiar, these earths over here? Remember, what did we do to calculate earths? Ecological footprint, right? Who's the biggest abuser of resources? Humans. Within humans, in the world, who are the biggest abuser? We are. The United States of America. Think of it as us for U.S. Yes. Yes. So there's a consume, and ecological footprint would include waste, so they would be up there. But in the United States, and honestly, and that's a really good point regarding China, U.S., these charts, I'm not going to say you have to know them unless I tell you you have to know it. So the orders, when we talk about who's the biggest consumer of oil, who's the biggest depleter of oil, all of these things, they fluctuate so much, we can't even keep up. So you want to put here, make a note to yourself that this order is not necessarily something you have to know on the test. But at the current rate that we consume in the United States of America, how many earths do we need in order to survive? 5. And that is a given fact. If we would have done our ecological footprint as a class, on an average, we would have been anywhere between 4.5 and 6.5 Earths, give or take a couple, so we would have been at 5. So every once in a while, you have to learn a scientist in this class who discovered something. Garret Hardin, definitely going to be on the AP test. He came up with this term called tragedy of the commons. What we just did in our lab is tragedy of the commons, okay? Basically, oceans is a perfect example of tragedy of the commons. It's free land or water, doesn't matter, available to anybody. When we have that access to what he calls commons, and you could take your word and take an arrow and underline the word free lands, however you want to do it. Commons are the free lands. He refers to free lands as common. So open areas that people have unlimited access to. When you're given that, what's going to happen? Overusing. You're going to abuse the land and deplete the resources. That is what's considered tragedy of the commons. Taking free, open access land and using it to the point where it's not going to sustain any future generations. So let's look at this picture. This is a comparison of MDCs versus LDCs in terms of resource depletion. What's an MDC? More developed countries like who? Like us. LDCs, less developed or lower developed. US or more developed countries blank approximately 30 times as much as spend. Good, because I'm showing you money. Or make. Make and spend. It's really make. So we have the money. That's what makes us more developed countries financially. Then we spend more or consume more. And with that comes what? Waste. What is it? What do we mean when we pollute? What are we doing? No, guys. When we did the major environmental topics, I told you pollution and waste are going to be kind of different. So when you pollute something, what are you doing? Chemicals. You're introducing chemicals into an area that are at levels that are going to be harmful or in excess. So degradation is what? What do you say? What does it mean to degrade something? Abuse it. What are you doing to it? If you degrade something, you're doing what? You're changing its what? Quality. Quality, good. You're changing its state or its quality. So that is very correlated with pollution and resource depletion and everything else. But whenever we are going to describe pollution in this class, we are not going to use the word pollution. We will describe it. So if you're going to say the air is polluted, you're going to say chemicals such as blank and blank were emitted into the atmosphere that caused damage, such as, we don't use the word pollution. Use the word pollution and I scratch it out. Okay. Biodiversity, what does it mean? Break down the word. Bio means life. Diversity means variety. So variety and quantity of species or life is biodiversity, and the problem is the loss. And remember when I first introduced this topic, I showed you a coral reef. Here you see an actual coral reef thriving with colors and variety, and then you've got this, which is what's happening a lot, death of coral reefs due to climate change, which is our next topic. So what is climate change? It's a change in global regional climate patterns. And what's it mainly, when you think of climate change, what automatically pops into your head? Heat, right? Global warming, the warming of Earth. Anybody know what's causing that? No. People. Doing what? Good. Use of fossil fuels, it's what's leading to global warming.